Government contracting is no different from your commercial work in that building relationships is key. But one thing that is different is how many different people are involved in making decisions. In government work, there are multiple people who all need to know, like, and trust you. The good news is you can meet these people and get to know them. You just need to know who they are. So in this video, you'll learn who are the different people you need to get to know to win federal business. And then I'm going to share with you my tips so you'll be successful. And let's jump in with my first tip. And this one tip is going to put you ahead of the crowd because you'd be amazed how many people don't do this. The thing to understand is that government employees are risk averse. They care about meeting their mission, and they don't want to risk their mission by hiring a company they can't trust. So I want you to think of every interaction with them as a test. They're testing you to see if they can trust you. I mean that. If you meet with someone and they say, "Send me your capabilities statement," don't assume that's a throwaway comment. Send them your capabilities statement. And if they say, "Email me in 2 weeks," then email them in exactly 2 weeks. So do exactly what they ask for and think of every interaction as your opportunity to build trust. Remember, you don't want them thinking, "How can I trust this company with my mission?" when I asked them to do something simple like send me their capabilities statement, and they never even did that. Now let's go over who the different players are. The person I'd like you to meet first is called the Small Business Specialist. There are thousands of these small business specialists working in individual government offices throughout the country, and it's their job to talk to you and answer your questions about how to do business with that agency. So of all the people we're going to talk about, these people are the easiest for you to meet. You'll find these people in the small business office. I'm showing you here the websites of different agency small business offices. Now these offices go by different names. They could be the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, or the Office of Small Business Programs. If you Google small business and the agency you're targeting, you'll find this office. Now, the thing to understand is that the small business specialist is not your buyer. They can't award a contract to you, but they can help you by providing information on the products and services the agency purchases and by helping you find your buyers within the agency. So start with them and ask for a meeting. And personally, I find face-to-face meetings much more productive than telephone calls. So I would request a face-to-face meeting if possible. Now for my next tip. Most people, when meeting agency reps for the first time, say either, "What does your agency do?" or "What do you need?" Or maybe they'll walk up to the government's booth at a conference and say, "We're a veteran-owned business. What contracts do you have for me?" That doesn't work. Please set yourself apart from the competition by not doing that. Instead, take a look at the agency website before your meeting so you already know what the agency does. And then tell them specifically what your company does, so they'll be able to figure out how best to help you. And when you have a meeting with them, after you describe your business's capabilities and the benefits you provide, then you'll ask questions. And here's some information you can ask for. How frequently the organization purchases the product or service you provide, the usual quantities purchased, typical delivery or performance schedules, the last company to provide the product or service, the last price paid, their projected future requirements, and who in the agency you should be talking to. And then you can ask the small business specialist to help you set up meetings with the people you need to meet. So the small business specialist can help you learn about the organization, help you identify who you should be talking to, and can make introductions to those people, but they don't write contracts. So next, let's talk about the contracting office. The contracting office is where the actual contracting process takes place. That means drafting solicitations, running competitions, conducting negotiations, and signing and administering contracts. And this is where the contracting officer works. The contracting officer is the person who actually signs the contract with your company, and no one else has the power to sign a contract, to bind the government to a contract. Not the engineer who needs the item, not the program manager who runs the program, not even the budgeting office that has the money. Only the contracting officer can sign contracts for the government. And once you're awarded the contract, if you follow directions from anyone else, you're doing so at your own risk, because only directions from the contracting officer are contractually binding. The contracting officer is supported by the contract specialist, and as a practical matter, most of the time, you'll be dealing with a contract specialist. Think of it this way. The contracting officer is responsible for lots of contracts, so they don't have time to write all the documentation and do all the paperwork. So the contracting officer will have a bunch of contract specialists who prepare the solicitations and administer the contracts. Often, you'll see the contract specialist listed as the point of contact for a solicitation. And once you're awarded a contract, the contract specialist is the person you'll deal with on a day-to-day basis. A lot of times, these contract specialists specialize in purchasing specific things. So I suggest you start by looking at past federal contract data to see who is buying what you sell. This is free, publicly available data. Chances are the government has purchased what you sell before, and you can look up the name of the contract specialist for the previous contracts. So get their name because you want to get to know them. Okay, the contracting office writes the contracts, but they don't decide on the government's needs. They don't decide how many computers to purchase or what landscaping services are needed. For that, we need to talk about the end user, because these are the people who actually decide what and how much to buy. This could be a facility manager who has a leaky roof he needs repaired, or who decides how often the janitors should mop the floors in the building, or an engineer who writes the specifications for a new building they need constructed, or the program manager who decides how many auditors are needed. Everything the government buys starts as some person's requirement. And here's another tip. Requirement is a special term in government contracting. You want to get in the habit of using that word. For example, you can ask, what are the requirements? You want to identify the person who determines the requirements for the product or service your business provides and make an appointment to meet that person. So how do you find the end user? These people will have different job titles depending on what you do, but when you're looking for these people, look for job titles like engineer or program manager or facilities manager. And when you're meeting with that small business specialist, you can ask them to make introductions and help you get a meeting. Also, be sure to check out the agency website. Many agencies post employee directories, and you can look for those job titles there. Or you might find an organizational chart or a project description with the name of the person managing the project. And also, don't forget about LinkedIn. Millions of federal employees are on LinkedIn, and chances are your end user is as well. So if you do a search and filter by agency, by job title, and by location, you'll probably find these people, and you can use LinkedIn to find out more about them and connect with them. And when you meet with these people, keep in mind that you're there to learn, not pitch. Remember, they're not going to write you a contract from this meeting because they don't write contracts. So I would let them do most of the talking so you can learn as much as possible about their needs. Of course, you'll want to explain what you do and how your business can help them. You'll also want to explain what sets you apart from the competition, and maybe even try to influence the future solicitation to your advantage. But by spending most time listening to them talk, you can learn a lot about what they're looking for, including what's working for them now and about things their current vendor isn't doing that they wish they would do. Now, there's one thing I need to explain about timing. They won't discuss current solicitations. Once the RFP is posted, the end user won't meet with you. And in practice, the closer the competition is to beginning, the less they'll talk to you. The reason is there are procurement integrity rules they have to follow that govern when and how government employees can meet with vendors. So the important thing is to find your end user early enough so you can talk to them well in advance of the solicitation hitting the street. My next tip is learn to speak their language, because government employees tend to speak in acronyms and use specific phrases to describe their needs. And by using these acronyms and phrases, you'll sound like an insider. You can learn this by reading the agency's website. For example, read the agency's strategic plan. And when you meet with these people, pay attention to the words they use, the acronyms they use, and start using them yourself. So you may be wondering, who's the top dog, the contracting officer or the end user? Well, depending on the office you're selling to and what you're selling, you may be working more closely with one or the other. And it really does vary. For most of my contracts, I worked very closely with the program manager, and they were effectively calling the shots. But I've also had contracts where the contracting officer was top dog. So get to know the people in both organizations and understand that depending on what you sell and the particular organization involved, either the contracting officer or the end user may be your most important contact. Once you start getting to know the people in your target organization, you'll be able to figure this out. Now, we're talking about the government, and for just about every rule, there is an exception. So let's go over the exception to my comments about contracting officers. And that's for what the government calls micro purchases. For small purchases, non-contracting employees can buy things as long as the purchases are under the micro purchase threshold. And there are hundreds of thousands of individuals throughout the government that have been issued purchase cards to make micro purchases. Purchase card is just government speak for credit card. Micro purchases can be a way to get your foot in the door and start building relationships that you need to go after a bigger contract. Maybe somebody has a little job that no one wants to do, maybe a wall that needs to be painted. Take that little job that no one wants and do a fabulous job. And then you'll be able to say you've done business with the government, and that will get you over that hurdle of no one wanting to be the first to hire you. The other people to get to know are not government employees, they're other contractors. Remember, the government is probably buying what you sell from someone else today, and those people are potential teaming partners for you. And you already know you can find that information by doing free online searches of past contract award data. Now, there are two different scenarios here I want you to keep in mind. First, Say the government has awarded a big contract to a large business. Let's say they sign a big construction contract with Bechtel. In government lingo, Bechtel would be called the prime. Chances are that prime has small business subcontracting goals, and they subcontract out part of the work to small businesses. So they are a potential customer for you. In fact, many companies choose to work as a subcontractor to a large prime rather than going after a contract directly with the government. Second, maybe the government has awarded a contract to a small business similar to yours. You may want to think about possibly teaming with that company in the future. In fact, a tried and true strategy is to team with someone who already has the connections in the office you're targeting. When my company had government contracts, lots of small businesses reached out to me wanting to team with me to take advantage of my connections and get their foot in the door. Okay, friends, you got this. Now, you know who you need to meet. But before you go into those meetings, you'll want to have two things ready: your elevator pitch and your capability statement. I have videos on both of those topics, and I'll put links to those videos in the notes below. So watch those videos next, and then get started meeting with people. But before you go, don't forget to hit the like button and share the video with others who are interested in government contracting. Thanks for joining me. See you next time.